Hello, and welcome to Judgement Engine. I'm Jarrett, he's Justin, and we're talking about WandaVision.
Today we'll be going over two episodes again. We'll be doing episodes 6 and 7 again because the plot machinations don't really warrant one entire episode for the full thing. So first we'll be talking about episode 6. This one had, I guess, primarily two main things kind of going on. One is there was this sort of Halloween big meta element, and then two was Vision's sort of exploration of the edge of town and what leads to his disassembly at the end there. Um, so if we go ahead and get into it, can I just say, first off, I think it's kind of fun that we were able to get to a sort of in-universe place where we put on these costumes and sort of like poke fun at the source material.
It's
Like,
I will say it's kind of cute. Like I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world.
mhm,
Um it does feel like this is one of those things where like I question like if we're like what is too meta or not meta enough like within this show since it is playing
mhm.
with like the TV tropes and like what like we see and all that kind of stuff. Like is this too far to like reference like Marvel of past, or is it like is it just right?
Yeah, for me, it felt kind of like in the just right territory because the original costumes look so stupid.
I
Like you
mean,
kind of have to make fun of it. You have to
yeah,
bring it in at all.
yeah, I will say that I think a lot of superhero costumes are still like pretty ridiculous in like movies and
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, I would say the golden popped collar cape is a little goofy.
It's funny how they made it still look cheap here. Another thing this episode kind of brought in was it brought some of that weirdness back that was had been kind of missing since our expository parts. I don't know. Like if there's anything that's good about the show, it's that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the weird stuff, like obviously like we've been like pushing for it and we've been like hoping to see more of it, kind of. Especially after, the first few episodes really kind of hooked us in with it. So
Mhm.
seeing it return was actually like was nice. It was a little weird because it was like, hey, I thought you guys were kind of over this. Like, why are we bringing it back?
Uh-huh.
But in and of itself, right? Like in a vacuum, I think it's a neat thing.
It was just a nice like moments, even though we kind of understand everything that's going on in a way. Just this sort of like you don't quite get what's going on at the edge of town and everything's a little off. Like even if there's nothing surprising about it, it was still nice to see again.
Yeah, it was nice to see something spooky on the Halloween episode, you know?
Hmm.
Like it felt right.
Another part of this was there was a ton of faux Quicksilver in this one. Uh, did it work for you? I mean, now that we are kind of like we're getting now that there's no story behind him, right? It literally is just sort of like stunt casting, right? He even breaks the fourth wall to say something to that effect himself. Um, how's that working for you?
So I think this is maybe like the opposite side of the coin of like the Marvel costume meta thing. Like the Marvel costume goofy like Halloween setup was like it's meta and like it's kind of like cute, whereas this
Mhm.
is like it's like meta for the sake of being meta. Like it was just like remember when this dude was Quicksilver in a different movie, and like we pushed for slash like tried to buy into the idea that like maybe this was like leading up to something really interesting with like mutants, or we were going to somehow tie in like the other, like the X-Men properties, or we were going to do something wild like that. Whereas like he's just some dude. Like so far, like he plays as their uncle and like plays video games with him and
Mhm.
um just kind of hangs out, you know.
Yeah, and he's just sort of like he's like almost reading the script line of should he question Wanda at this point. He's like, "Oh, sorry, I have to do this. It says it right here."
Um yeah, yeah, his purpose and his motivations are like very like not well sort of built up or like demonstrated, at least when he's like first hanging around.
And similarly, not well built up. The two kids in this, I don't. see where they're going with it or what they're trying to do. It feels really scattershot. Uh, Even
You
though their aging has stabilized in this one, it still feels really like what are we trying to get with these two?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because the kids I would even say like the okay, so I would say like before the kids felt like they were like a big focus, like the kids growing up and the kids doing things was like a big like part of the show, because like they were aging so quickly and like there was like this like really big importance being, put on them by, Wanda and stuff. And I would say like even though this is Halloween and like Halloween should be kind of like a kid-centric holiday even,
Mm-hmm.
because of like the dressing up and the candy and all that stuff. Like I think the kids were like way in the background. Like I think the most interesting part of 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 like the Halloween time was like Vision. You talked about him like kind of journeying around towards the edges of town. Like
Mm-hmm.
that felt like it was the main driver to me. Whereas like the kids who should be having like who are like primed to be like a vehicle for like weird spooky things happening in town because like they might be trick or treating and going from house to house or whatever and seeing weird things. We don't
Right.
get any of that.
And they have an
They're
internal
just shoved to the
perspective,
background.
so they could, in theory, be the ones to question all of this or something.
Wouldn't that be wild?
Yeah,
Crazy.
but they don't do anything like that. But yeah, so as you were saying, the through line seems to really be what Bethany's doing around the edge of town, and we get to this sort of bravura set piece.
Can you go back 1 second? I just want to point
Sure.
this out before we get to more interesting things. I think this so you picked this picture and I think it's perfect because it's look at Quicksilver. He's not doing anything. The kids are
Hmm.
in the background, unimportant. And I feel like it's a very
I mean, he kind of comes in for one more like Wanda is mean plot point when she pushes him when he says too much, sort of.
okay.
And then he's at that point he's basically used up. But
Okay.
uh, so we get to this bravura set piece at the end, which for my money was it was actually quite bracing. It was like all of the things that they had set up. It finally like made sense. It finally paid off in a way.
Okay. So this is a question for you. Um, Out of this entire series, we're going big picture here. Was this scene the most Marvel Cinematic Universe like movie scene that we had
Yeah, I
seen?
think that's fair. It was isolated, it was clean, but then it was like surprising, and you didn't know exactly what was going to happen. And obviously, there was a lot going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely like led that question that way, but like yeah, I think this was the most it felt like I was watching like a Marvel movie instead of just like a weirdly put together TV show.
Hmm. Uh, I think that it was also like the most emotionally bracing, whereas the TV show has kind of given us no stakes or anything like that at all. We finally had something that could have happened to someone that wasn't just going to be like blinked out of existence or whatever the next second, and she actually had to respond and change the rules of the game a little bit by expanding the hex to save him. It was interesting, which is the height that this show has reached, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I think this was a good scene, a good moment.
Yeah, so we peaked basically.
Well, maybe.
Well, in do you contest this assertion that maybe this episode 6 was maybe the height of what we've seen so far?
Um, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think I think there was a lot of kind of nothingness, a lot of kind of boring whatever kind of filler stuff in here. And I think this was like this had legitimately like interesting moments. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it should be appreciated in that context. As far as like highs for the entire series, I guess so. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I'd buy it because
Mm-hmm.
even though I enjoyed like the first 3 episodes, uh, like the weird mystery stuff. I don't know if I'd necessarily say those are like highs. You know what I mean? Like those are just kind of like rumblings in the background.
This is the first piece where if it was on TV, I would look at the TV again. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is the first piece that passes the you wouldn't keep turning test
Yes.
on the channel changer. even though that's not an analogy anyone will understand anymore.
But on the stream application before you click a different thing.
Yeah. This is the weird ad thing that's at the bottom of your article that this time you actually click. Once in
Yeah.
a while you click them on a lark. This is the first one. Okay, so that kind of brings us through the end of episode 6. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think we can jump right into the next episode.
So episode 7, this one is sort of the come down episode, so to speak, where we're sort of dealing with the fallout of what Wanda did, expanding the hex. Uh, we have Vision kind of pairing up with the nerd lady, and then we also have one other element where the is her name Rambo,
Rambo. Yeah.
the soldier outside, is trying to find a way back into the hex. So that's sort of the main things that happen in this episode. Um, so one of the things that was weird to me about this episode is after such a dramatic set piece and everything that happened, now we're kind of back to like the weird, awkward, half jokey, half like we don't know what we're doing TV parody thing again, like right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, it definitely feels um like I talked like a little bit before about like the big vision scene last episode felt like it was like a movie kind of moment. And now we're back to like, oh no, we have to have, 30 minutes of filler. So we have to kind of bring the level down and like have some kind of like meandering time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does this serve either of their characters? What happened? These two right here. I mean, Vision, what if he just kept going to the edge and did it again?
Yeah, it
To push out right again. And then her entire arc is she was supposed to be some brainy ahead of the curve person, and now she's put into this brainwash situation where she's basically useless.
it felt like the plot was moving too fast last episode, so they had to like put our characters on like a meaningless kind of side quest just to like
Mm-hmm.
eat up time. And I don't
Yeah,
know.
and we get them driving around doing nothing forever. Yeah, it wasn't that part didn't work at all, even though Vision was the most interesting part of last episode. Now he was the weakest part. I will say in this episode, it felt like they are finally reaching the TV shows that they know, because the Office gimmick was much stronger in this episode. The like these people watch The Office, which is not surprising, right? That was sort of the defining moment of our time. But they actually had jokes that were related to the form that were funny, which is maybe the first time I've seen that in this show.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like they're like what they were like the notes they were trying to hit, they were doing a much better job um like now that they're kind of more modern than they were
Mm-hmm.
before. So I definitely agree with you there.
And they even used it to comment a little bit on the meta narrative, right? Like the reviewer is asking her if she feels something about the control that's happening in the town and things like that. It actually tied in, whereas it before you had to pull kind of hard to get how
Mm.
the strings tied in, right? Like the magic show in episode 3 that clearly tied in because they had superpowers. But then how did all the other stuff, the magic dinner and stuff like that, how did that tie in? I got nothing, right? There was no reason necessarily. It was much weaker. So now this part's getting a little
You
stronger.
don't like that people in the 50s ate dinner? Is that not doing it for you? Is that
The
not
thematic content of 50s dinner is weak to me.
okay?
Uh, the thematic content of this journey is also very weak to me. Rambo is told she might get mega cancer. She goes into the bubble. She watches it crush a moon lander, and then she decides I'll probably be fine
Yeah.
because it knows me. It
Yeah.
knows me. I guess.
Um you yeah, it definitely feels like the plot doesn't necessarily need her, but she keeps showing up. Where it's like, hey, don't forget about her. And I'm like, oh, I remember her. I just don't quite know what she's doing or why she's doing it.
It even gives her superpowers, apparently. As maybe a like, okay, I guess we have to use you for something.
She might have superpowers, maybe, which are potentially permanent or not permanent, or maybe we'll never see this character again, or maybe this character is going to get their own Disney Plus show or movie, or who knows.
Hmm. But I mean, she uses it to confront Wanda at the end of this episode, and then she just kind of backs down. So it wasn't even useful at the penultimate moment when it would have been like the discovery of something on her hero's journey. It was
Yeah.
literally just like it helped her. The writer was like, "How do we get her across town in time?" Because Vision had to drive all this way. So what if we gave her superpowers? Then she could just fly there. That fixes the scene. Beautiful. Write it.
Um, yeah, not my favorite, not my favorite addition, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll
We'll
see.
see where it goes. Uh, so the last thing we have is the big reveal.
Big lady.
We finally find out that we will have a villain for the season, and it will be the dear neighbor Agnes.
Okay, so
Uh,
I just want to hop in right here. I want to say that I think the idea of like the helpful neighbor actually being the secret evil villain on paper, like if you just were given that like idea, like a sentence or whatever, is not terrible. Okay?
mhm.
Like that can be some like tricky kind of business, right? But I will say like in this show in particular, to me, it was terrible because they did they did nothing to like give you breadcrumbs to lead up to it. Like there was to me, like if there were hints, they were incredibly subtle and like not it, I guess what I'm saying is like it didn't feel like it was earned. Like they were like, "Surprise, you idiot. Didn't you know the whole time that she was evil?" And I'm like, "No, she didn't. She just kind of hung out." And
I mean, she is the opposite of a red herring, right? Because she even interacts in Vision's journey the time before. She seems stuck just like everyone else in every moment that we've come across. The only thing that's a little weird about her is she seems a little more engaged, right? She's like in the main cast.
mhm.
But I mean, that's not quite enough of a breadcrumb. I'll say, I'll give them this credit. I think that if their goal was to have a sneaky villain, like they did choose someone you wouldn't necessarily expect. Like we never theory crafted it was Agnes all along, right?
Yeah, I think you brought up an important thing though, where you were like the only thing that was like weird about her was like she was more engaged, and you're like, and that's because she was part of like the main cast, and like
Hmm.
that's actually like really interesting because potentially if they had if they had shown us the difference between the main cast and like the extras in the town, like maybe we could have better picked out a difference. Like I know Agnes is main cast, but like she's doing things different than the rest of the main cast. Like more like in a more sort of obvious way. Like
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Because like you could separate them into like sort of like different tiers, but like I don't know if I necessarily like picked up on that. Like maybe that was their intention and I just didn't pick up on it. But I feel like I didn't pick up on it because like we we barely saw like any interaction. Like
Yeah, the
most of
the
this
neighbor cutting the hedge, the blonde lady that crushed the cup. Did we ever even see them again?
no.
I think they were just. That is it.
Do you remember the doctor? Do you remember the doctor that was like to help, there to help? No. Or like the Vision's coworker in the office who we saw like once every 4 hours or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, no big narrative there. So it was really just you might have guessed it was her if you had been thinking just based on the fact that she showed up more than twice.
Yeah, you're like you're like it must be her because there's no one else here.
The FBI guy really seemed like he'd be it, but it turned out he was just a shit. Well, maybe there may still be something to be revealed in the episodes to come, but for now it seems like I mean, look, she's got glowy eyes. She's in the glowy eye
I
club.
mean, she has glowy eyes.
She seems like she's going to be the
I
big
mean,
bad.
I mean that's it. We're done.
Hmm. It seems like they're going a super witchy direction with her, which makes it like the witch versus witch thing. I guess we'll see, but that's sort of weird to me.
I yeah, I definitely feel like the the sort of like how it's set up of like WandaVision, it's a TV show, it's whatever. I do think it's kind of weird that your villain is just like is just a witch,
Hmm.
you know? Like I think when like when this first started we were like theorizing about like maybe, like, ooh, is it some weird mind control thing? Is Wanda in some, science tube somewhere and they're doing experiments in her mind or something, right? And then like the villain is just like, oh, it's an evil lady.
The villain is Arthur Miller's The Crucible. Society's expectations on witches. Also, it's not even witches. Okay. Any other last thoughts for episode 7?
Um, no. I think we're at the point where we're just kind of coasting into the finish line. Like we can smell it. We can
Hmm.
smell the end, and we just need to go for it, I think.
All
Um,
right. Well, we'll be back next time with the final 2 episodes. We'll give our series review. Hold on to your muffins.
all right. Well, this has been another episode of Judgment Engine, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.